What's up, Night Owl? Steely here, back with another video, and today we're going to be ranking the level 2 classes of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. If you missed the ranking of the level 1 classes of D&D 5th edition, make sure you check that video out. Link is in the description. For the purposes of this video, we're going to be looking at the class features that a class has as a whole, not just what they get at level 2. We're going to be looking at the entire class. And just like in the previous video, this is an opinion piece. You may not agree with where I put some of the classes on this list. And that's okay. I'm going to be looking at this objectively. I'm going to weigh the classes side by side. And a lot of this will be dependent on the game that you're playing in, the DM that's running it, the amount of time between short rest. All of these things are things that I take into consideration and that I factor in from my own experience running modules and homebrews and playing in other people's modules and homebrews, and just a general feel of what I think of each class ranked at level 2. So let's get to it. Coming in at number 13 is the Bard. Now, the Bard sure did fall a long way from level 1. At level 1, it had Bardic Inspiration and the Healing Word, and those were so strong at that level because being able to get somebody up and the amount of healing the Healing Word does compared to a level 1 character's health pool. And then there's Bardic Inspiration, which you can add to your attack rolls and saves. Those are so great, and they still have them, and they're still great, but whereas all the other classes are getting these great features at second level, some are even getting subclasses, the Bard gets Jack of all trades and Song of Rest. Jack of all trades effectively giving you a +1 to your skills that you're not proficient in and your initiative, and Song of Rest effectively giving you an improved short rest. Both of these features are just meh. So the Bard is effectively leaning on what they got at first level, which is the Bardic Inspiration and their spellcasting. Spellcasting is still good because they have Healing Word, but that's really it, is the D6 that they can add to somebody's attack rolls and saving throws in combat, and their Healing Word if somebody goes down, they can get them back up. Those are really the strong things about the Bard that the Bard has that makes them great, but it's not enough to really put them above anyone on this list. Coming in at number 12 is the Rogue. Now, at second level, the Rogue is going to get their Cunning action, which allows them to dash, disengage, and hide as a bonus action. This gives the Rogue a ton of mobility. They can disengage and just move across the battlefield. They can dash as a bonus and as an action and basically triple their movement. They have tons of mobility, but they don't have anything to do with it. At this level, the Rogue is still leaning on its sneak attack damage, which is only a D6. So all that the Rogue really brings to the table is that mobility and that damage. And there are classes at this level that are more mobile and do more damage. So that's why the Rogue is ranked so low on this list at level 2. Coming in at number 11 is the Monk. Now, in my opinion, the Monk fills almost the exact same role as the Rogue. It has that mobility, it has that damage. They have a very similar play style, but in my opinion, at second level, the Monk just does it better. First, they get unarmed movement, which adds a flat 10 feet to their base land speed. They also get key points at this level, which they can spend to dodge, disengage, or dash as a bonus action, which is comparable to the Rogue's Cunning action, except that the Rogue always has their Cunning action, and key is an expendable resource. This is something that was factored into this tier list, but the big reason that the Monk came out on top above the Rogue is that the key points can be spent on Flurry of Blows. Now, something important to note here is that these key points come back on a short rest, not even a full short rest, half of a short rest spent meditating, and you get these key points back. Whereas the Rogue's Cunning action is just always active. I think that the Monk still comes out on top because of how easily it is to get those key points back and how often they're going to be able to use them. Now, granted, over a long period of time between short rest, the Rogue will come out on top with their Cunning action and their sneak attack, but keep in mind that even without their key points, the Monk can still add their unarmed strike, and they will be able to add their ability modifier to the damage. So they're very close to the Rogue as far as damage output, even without their key points. The Rogue does do more damage, granted, but the Rogue does not. But I think the key points are what put the Monk above the Rogue in this particular case. Coming in at rank 10 is the Artificer. Now, at level 2, the Artificer gets to infuse items. They get to start infusing things. And this is really potent at this level because they effectively just get to come into the game with magic items, whether you as the DM like it or not. And this includes a Bag of Holding. A Bag of Holding provides great utility to the party because it means that they never have to leave loot behind and they don't have to worry about carry weight anymore. The Artificer can also infuse weapons and make them +1 in magical so they can bypass those pesky resistances of lycanthropes and ghosts. The problem with the Artificer at this level that it shares with the previous 3 classes is that it suffers from a medical condition known as subclassia, which is characterized by a lack of subclass. If you're concerned that you or a member of your party may be suffering from subclassia, here's a list of some of the symptoms. Class envy, rules lawyering, constantly getting outshined by characters that have their subclass, not playing a fighter or barbarian, blaming the dice, and in some of the more severe cases, constantly asking your DM if you can level up yet. Moving on to number 9, we have the Wizard. Now, the Wizard gets their subclass at this level, but it just does not have much of an impact. The most notable subclasses being the Divination Wizard and the Evocation Wizard. Divination giving them the ability Portent, which lets them effectively re-roll any dice that the DM makes, and the Evocation Wizard allowing them to shape their evocation spells so they don't have to constantly worry about the party's positioning when they burning hands. The big drawback to the Wizard is that D6 hit die. As they level up, that's going to constantly haunt them through the later levels. Their hit points are always going to be behind everyone else, and they're still only rocking the first level spells. It's pretty common knowledge that once a Wizard has access to those high level spells, they pretty much own the game. But at level 2, they're down here at rank 9. At rank 8, we have the Sorcerer. Now, at level 2, the Sorcerer just doesn't get much. They get Font of Magic, which gives them 2 sorcery points. And the problem is that they don't really have anywhere to spend those sorcery points. They don't get meta magic until 3rd level, and they don't get access to the subclass features that they can spend points into until 6th, I think. So they really can only spend their sorcery points on getting spell slots back, which a 1st level spell slot costs 2 sorcery points. So at level 2, the Sorcerer essentially gets another spell slot. This means that the Sorcerer is leaning heavily on what they got at 1st level, which is their subclass. And in my opinion, their subclass options and subclass features are better at this level than what the Wizard has gotten. Portent is great, but being able to add Cleric spell list to your own spell list and that 2d4 from the Divine Soul Sorcerer is just phenomenal. Now, someone did reach out to me after that last video and they mentioned Ritual Casting, which the Wizard has and the Sorcerer does not. Now, in my opinion, Ritual Caster does not put enough on the Wizard to sway them one way or the other, which is why I didn't mention it. But the most notable spell that you can Ritual Cast is Unseen Servant, which is really dependent on your own creativity. You can get a lot done with that particular spell. There's also Find Familiar, Detect Magic, and Identify. Those are solid, but I don't think they add enough to the party to really to bring the Wizard anywhere but where it was in the previous tier and in this tier. At number 7, we have the Warlock. Now, the Warlock has fallen a long way because at level 2, all they get is Invocations. And they do get that spell slot, which to a Warlock is like a huge deal. They've effectively doubled their spell slots at this level. But the Invocations are really limited. They don't have a whole lot of choices. In my opinion, the most solid choices for power, for building a more min-maxed or efficient character would be Devil's Sight to see through magical darkness. The most obvious being Agonizing Blast. Adding your charisma to your Eldritch Blast is solid. You can put out as much damage as the martial characters at a range. So those are good. That one's pretty good. And if you decided to go Hexblade Warlock and you're already on the front line with a weapon, then I think the temporary hit points from the unlimited False Life is probably the best option. So those are the 3 invocations, in my opinion, that stand out the most at this level. Later on, your invocations are really make a difference. But I think those 3 are the ones that stand out at this level. And this is why I put the Warlock above the Sorcerer and the Wizard, because they still have the Hexblade, which is still strong. They get that 2nd spell slot, so they can keep up with things. And they're just overall really good. Their things come back on a short rest, whereas the others come back on a long rest. And they're just, at the lower levels, they are efficient, and they can just keep up with the classes that don't have to expend resources as much. Whereas the Sorcerer and the Wizard have the lower hit die, and they are spent. Once those spells are gone, the short rest doesn't do much for them. So that's why I put the Warlock here. Coming in at rank 6 is the Barbarian. Now, at level 2, the Barbarian gets Reckless Attack and Danger Sense. Danger Sense effectively gives them proficiency with their dexterity saving throws, which is solid. But Reckless Attack is like the big thing that they get at 2nd level. And it's great being able to get advantage on a melee swing. The big problem with it is that all attacks against you until your next turn have advantage. If it was just the thing that you were attacking, this would be a great ability to put them much higher. But The fact that you have to trade off so much, and I'm aware that they are raging, so they're going to be taking half damage probably, but this is all attack. So the more things that are attacking, the worse reckless attack gets. And it's just this huge trade-off. All of the classes above the Barbarian don't have to make these trade-offs, but they get much stronger features without having to do this trade-off. So that's why reckless attack isn't, in my opinion, that great. I mean, again, getting advantage on all your swings is terrific, but having everything, every attack roll against you have advantage until your next turn is a brutal penalty for it, even though you'll be damage resistant with rage. This means that the Barbarian is leaning on what they got at first level, and at first level they got the rage and unarmored defense. This is still strong here at second level. They have that D12 hit die. That's going to always be a great boon to them as they level up. Rage is still giving them damage resistance, unarmored defense. They're still a really strong class that can still put out a lot of damage, and they can still take a lot of damage. This is why they're still up there on the list, but not all the way like they were at level 1. Now we've reached the top 5, and coming in at number 5 is the Ranger. At level 2, the Ranger gets the fighting style and spellcasting. This goes a long way at level 2. A fighting style is really strong because it's not an expendable resource, and it's so versatile. Not to mention that the Ranger has the D10, they have the armor proficiencies, they have their weapon proficiencies, and now they have spell casting. A spell list which includes things like Zephyr Strike, Fog Cloud, and Cure Wounds. They can actually get somebody up that is down. The Ranger is incredibly versatile. They bring a lot. The only reason that they're not higher on the list is because that long rest is what's limiting their spell slots. Coming in at number 4, we have the Fighter, which at this level gets Action Surge. Action Surge gives them that extra attack action. This is such a great ability, mainly because it comes back on a short rest, just like their second wind. Combine that with their D10 hit die, their armor and weapon proficiencies, and their fighting style, and they are just good overall. Now, I feel like I need to make a note here on the Fighter and the Ranger and comparing the two of them and why I put the Fighter above the Ranger, because they are very similar at level 2. Both of them have the fighting style, the D10, the proficiencies, and the martial weapons. But the difference is the Ranger has spell casting, 2 spell slots, and the Fighter has Action Surge and Second Wind. Now, in my opinion, a spell slot, a single spell slot, is better than Second Wind because of the versatility of a spell slot and because that spell slot could be a cure, whereas Second Wind is a stronger heal that can only hit the Fighter. Cure Wounds is something that can hit everyone. So in my opinion, the spell slot is better than the Second Wind. The other comparison is Action Surge, which is actually greater than a spell slot. So what really was the deciding factor, in my opinion, was that the Fighter's abilities come back on a short rest, and the Ranger's spell slots only come back on a long rest. So like I mentioned in the first video, the Fighter can just keep going. They have so much and they get it all back on a short rest. They are just consistent and strong throughout. Coming in at number 3 is the Paladin. Oh boy, does the Paladin get strong at second level. Smite is just too much. It's too much. But let's have a look at what they get. They get a fighting style, they get spell casting, and they get divine smite. Now, the Paladin at first level got all those proficiencies that I talked about with the Ranger and the Fighter, except heavy armor. Ranger didn't get heavy armor. I feel like I need to mention that, but most Rangers are dex-based. That's why, on a side-by-side comparison, having heavy armor proficiency is obviously better, but it's just not. It's something that I kind of glossed over, but I'll go ahead and mention it. Rangers do not get heavy armor proficiency. They do get shields. So the Fighter and the Paladin do have that. Now, the Paladin beats the Fighter and the Ranger, in my opinion, because of Lay on Hands and Divine Smite. Divine Smite does 2d8 when they want to. They spend a spell slot and it goes off. They do not risk wasting that spell slot like literally everyone else. And they can choose to do it on a crit, doubling the dice. They just have that option. Now, the smite is obvious. Like when they smite, I'm going to do the extra 2d8, does a ton of damage, but they also have that Lay on Hands and they also have spells. Yes, you can spend your spell slots on things other than Divine Smite, Paladin mains. There's not just Smite. And the Lay on Hands can continue to get the party members up. They have the D10 hit die. They have the fighting style now at second level, which I mentioned the versatility of it and how powerful that is. And they can get those party members up with the Lay on Hands. They have all those proficiencies. This is an amazing class at second level. Amazing. Coming in at number 2, the Cleric. The Cleric is still really high up on the list. They were ranked at the top and the level 1 class tier list, and they haven't gone far since then, because at level 2 they get Channel Divinity. And guess what? Their subclass feature also gives them another option for their Channel Divinity, because honestly, Channel Undead is not great. But if you look at things like the Life Domain, where you can channel hit points and spread it around, you can just basically get the whole party back up. And then the War Domain, adding +10 to an attack. Now, there's probably some of you out there, and this was a really hard decision to make, was Paladin versus Cleric. And really what it came down to is the value of those spell slots. In my opinion, I think that the channel is on par with the fighting style. And I think that the spell slots, the value of the spell slots, is what it really came down to. And when you look at it, the spell slot for the Paladin will almost certainly go to that 2d8 hit die, whereas the Cleric's spell slot can go a lot farther, in my opinion. They can do 3d10 with an inflict, they can do 46 with a guiding bolt, and they also have that list of buff spells and options. They just have more options. Now, the big weighing factor for that the Paladin has is, again, they can choose when that spell slot goes off. They do not have to waste it. So there's a chance that a Cleric can miss with their guiding bolt or their inflict wounds or break concentration on a spell, and the Paladin just gets all of it. This was factored in, believe me, but I still think that the Cleric is superior just from the sheer versatility of their subclasses, their channels, and their spells. Coming in at number 1, the undisputed leader of a level 2 D&D adventure. If you've been playing D&D for an extended period of time, you already know there is no argument to be had here. At level 2, the Druid is the strongest. If you are unsure why the Druid is placed here on this list, don't worry. Just pause the video, take a second, and read Wild Shape and the subclass Moon Druid. For the purposes of this video, we're going to be talking about 2 Druid subclasses: the Moon Druid and Not Moon Druid. If you choose Not Moon, the class is still strong. You can still Wild Shape. You still have those Wild Shape features. You get your spells. You get some pretty nifty things. But if you choose Moon Druid, you can Wild Shape into a CR1 as a bonus action twice per short rest. This effectively gives a level 2 Druid access to multiple health bars and multi-attack. Chances are, depending on the size of your party and the composition, the Druid could wipe out the rest of the party on its own. And if that form is dropped to 0 hit points, they just revert back to their original form. The damage does carry over, granted, but they could just bonus action Wild Shape back into the creature that they were in the first place, back to full health. The Druid can also spend their spell slots to heal themselves while in Wild Shape form. And that's pretty much where their spell slots are going to go if they're a Moon Druid, because they get to spend an hour in this form. And if their health points start to get low and they don't want that damage rollover, they can just spend their Wild Shape to reset the form and effectively reset their hit points. And this comes back on a short rest. And that's it for the level 2 classes ranked. Do you agree with the list? Where did your class end up? Let me know in the comments down below. And keep in mind, this is just an opinion piece. Obviously, my opinion may be different from yours, and that's okay. A strong argument could be made about cunning action and the rogue being above the monk over that long extended period of time. The same thing could be said about the Paladin and the Cleric. Believe me, I spent a lot of time talking with other players and we had several debates about this, and a lot of thought went into this, and some people didn't agree, and that's okay. So if you didn't, let me know in the comments below what you think, what classes you would switch out, who should be higher, who should be lower. And if you want to be a part of this D&D community, make sure you join the Discord, link in the description. Come by, ask questions, let me know what you think. And as always, I'll see you at sundown.